Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. How are you out there in the big wide world? I'm so excited tonight. It's just gone 8 o'clock. I've left it a little bit of time so we could have the clap for carers if you're still going out and doing it. But welcome to the Mike Brewer live show. Tonight is a special night for me because I got one of my all-time heroes. Now I can call him a very good friend. He's the man who introduced me to this fine stuff, which is Scotch. And I know that a lot of people out there already in the wide world are very excited about me bringing him on. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, clap your hands wherever you're sitting watching this. Mr. Frank Stephenson, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that. Frank, how are you, buddy?
Hello, Mike. Hi, how are you?
Frank, this is already, we've got people pouring in online saying hello and how awesome this is. Frank, if I look off this way, don't get me wrong, I'm not being rude. I'm looking at the sidebar where there's thousands of people that are going to be throwing stuff at me and throwing questions at me, and they're going to be saying, I don't know if you can see it, but I can see it.
I see a bit of it. I do.
You see a bit of it. So they're joining in, and obviously they want to talk. So, Frank Stephenson, excited. So what's lockdown been like, Frank? I can see you've sorted out the shelves behind you, unlike mine. Mine are a bit of a yours are so Mr. Car Designer, they're neat.
Yeah. Nice. I've got a few cars, and you can't see even half of it.
I can see the Mini.
Yeah, I've got. Well, it starts out with my all-time favorite, the Jaggy type. Then it goes to the Mini, and then it just takes off and starts going down to Maseratis, McLarens, a couple race cars, or 4 nice race cars from Formula One that made a real impact. I've got my 917K there. I've got my Ferrari 330 P4. I've got the Hulk. On the top.
Well, listen, before me and you get going with the questions and answers, if you'd like to drink, Mr. Stephenson, and hold it up the screen. Cheers to you. Thank you very much, Frank.
Cheers.
Frank is the man who introduced me how to drink this stuff properly in Los Angeles. True story. We'll get to that in a minute. Frank, a little sideline for you. Little sideline. Your favourite car, the Jaguar E-Type. We just discussed where I live. Mr. Malcolm Sawyer lives about 50 yards away from my house, or would have done.
Oh, that must have a plaque on it.
It has. It's got a blue plaque outside. Malcolm Sawyer, designer of Jaguar E-Type, lived here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm always seeing people pulling up outside in their E-Types, parking them up in the street and having a picture taken.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. I lived in Leamington Spa, Mike, for at least 5 years, and I never knew that. Had no idea that Malcolm Sawyer was
and if you go past his house and turn left, you go to Frank Whittle's house, the man who invented the jet engine and shrunk the world.
Yep. Gosh. Well,
Lord Dennis was invented in my street. That's true as well. How about that?
That's Royal Leamington Spa.
It is Royal Leamington Spa.
Where it is. Good.
Right, so let's talk about you, Frank, because this is a big one for me tonight. You are, and I hope you don't mind me gushing here, and I don't want to embarrass you in front of our audience, but you are car designers become legends when they pass away, a bit like a Renaissance painter. We all talk about Michelangelo and Raphael and Leonardo da Vinci. They or Picasso. They are people that have passed away. Giario, whoever it is, they've gone. But you're Frank Stephenson, and you're still here. You're living in your own lifetime, and you're living in your own legend. It must be incredible.
I'm alive and kicking, that's for sure, Mike. I'm staying out of it.
So there was at the weekend a little bit of a competition to find out who was the best. In fact, I have got the picture somewhere to find out who was the best car designer ever, and you made the semi-finals. And you were only beaten by Giario. I mean, how could it be?
Well, Giugiaro was he was voted best designer of the 20th century. And if he still gets voted that 20 years later into the new century or new millennium, he's done something right. So just to get into the semifinals with Giugiaro, I mean, just getting that far was an honor for me. I don't mind. Those things are very much, I think we talked about it before, it's very much like a beauty contest, you know. Everybody's done something to get onto that list, no matter where you place on it. So, you know, it's whose fancy gets tickled the most, and who's feeling what on which day. So it's hard to judge something like that. It's just, you know, again, if you're participating in it, you get that close or that high up, it's an honor any way you look at it.
Oh, well, it certainly is an honour. It really is, and it's an honour having you on. So let's talk a little bit about you. First of all, you've got this fantastic American twang to your accent, but you're not American. Where are you from?
Well, I've never actually lived in the States. I grew up in Morocco, in Casablanca, Morocco. I went to school there. I had a few different languages under my belt by the time I went to first grade at the age of 6. And then it just went on from there. Growing up in a multinationality family, and speaking Arabic and also speaking French, because of the Casablanca being in the 60s was very French and very Arab, of course, but it really helped me to pick up languages at a young age. And at the age of 11, we moved to Istanbul, Turkey, and spent quite a while there. Then moved from there to Madrid, Spain, and I graduated from high school there, my last year of high school in Madrid. And then life really started to get interesting. I mean, that was pretty exotic of an upbringing, I'd imagine, for a lot of people, because most of us grew up in one area and don't really get a chance to travel too much. But my life it has been all about traveling on, you know, pretty much all over the world. And very nice to be able to have that under your belt, because it does widen pretty much your outlook on life. And got to be very thankful for that. It's tough when you're a kid, you're changing schools, changing, you know, your friends and everything. But now actually down to Facebook and a lot of the social media, you can still reconnect, which is a fantastic thing.
Fantastic.
I've recently discovered I have 2 cousins in America, in Georgia and Florida, that I'd always known about all my life, but had never actually met them or even had any contact with them. And, you know, it just, one thing led to another on Facebook, and we've been able to reconnect. So it's a beautiful thing.
The world gets a lot smaller on the internet. It certainly does. That's absolutely fair. I'm pretty sure, though, you're Frank Stephenson, so I'm pretty sure there's a lot of your family out there. You're not looking for them. They're going, my name's Stephenson. I reckon I could be related to him. And they're searching for you. They all, you know why, Frank? Because they think you're going to give them a free McLaren. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. A lot of people come out of the woodwork. I mean, I get a lot of people from you know, other countries that are saying, "Show me the way." You know, how do I get to do what you've done? And it boils down to not money. It boils down to how bad you want it, how much passion and how much energy you've got for to achieve those goals. And like, you know, Mike, is hard work pays off at the end. You know, good guys do win if you keep your nose clean. You know, and you
of course it does.
the line and keep moving. Yeah, you'll make it.
So when did you where did this stem from then, Frank? So you're a young lad. You're in Morocco. We've established that you've travelled around the world and you've got family. You speak Spanish, German, Italian, Arabic, and obviously English. So you speak several languages. So where you're very international, but where does it start for you in terms of the first time you sit down and you say to yourself, "I'm going to draw a car and I want to be a car designer"? Was you a 5-year-old kid who had the drawing crayons out, or was it when you was 10 and you was just obsessed with cars?
Gosh, that's a hard one. It really is hard, Mike, because I have no recollection of when I started drawing. It's almost as if, you know, you hear about kids that are good at singing or dancing and they just can't tell you when they started. It was almost as if they were born doing that. I kind of felt like I had a pen in my, I go everywhere with a pencil or a pen in my, I mean, I have to, you know, remove the pencil from my hand to shake hands with somebody. But to recall when it happened, I can't say. I just remember that I was just always consistently drawing in my free time, or whenever I had a chance, I was going back to, you know, coloring books and things. So I basically just grew up drawing. And my mother had a bit of a artsy side to her. She was into oil paintings and things. And so, I mean, I wasn't painting. I was basically drawing. I switched as quickly as I could from a pencil to a pen, just so that I could read the story as I was drawing. When you leave the lines of the pen on the paper, you build a story as you're drawing, and you can see where you started from. With pencils, you tend to erase, and you forget half of the trip getting to where you finally end up with your drawings. So I stuck to pens most of my life. But when it happened, I guess the turning point when I started realizing I was doing something a little bit unusual was in sort of around the late 60s, when my father had already established a car dealership in southern Spain. So he would end up sending, or I would end up going there in the summers to work in the dealership. And I worked in body repair, where I could do all the painting and body work and things. I like that hands-on approach to cars. And in the meantime, I was drawing all these cars on paper and tablet.
Don't break up, Frank. We need you back. Don't break up, you're back. Oh, right. He did.
I'm here.
You're there. I can hear you, but I can't see you. Oh dear.
I haven't touched anything, Mike. So
I'm sure you haven't. I've got a picture of a very young Frank up on my screen.
Yeah, I recognize that guy. His hair is a bit dark.
He's a very handsome dude, isn't he? Let's just, because I've lost you
all right.
Somehow in the feed. I don't know how. We might have to go out and come back in again. But what was your first? You went to college. You went to Pasadena College of Design. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mike. Art Center College of Design, just up in the foothills above the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Beautiful college, absolutely beautiful.
And that's where you sit down and you start to learn your craft in a professional way, designing cars, very much like this little picture we've got of you here. And your first job, you walk into Ford.
Yeah, I didn't. Well, it was a bit different than that. I didn't just walk in. I mean, one of the things when you're as a student in design, your main hope is that you get a job as a car designer, because you're going to work your butt off for 4 straight years and then hope that it pays off. And the tuition is very high, the living expenses are high. You've basically mortgaged your parents' house to be able to get through this university. And at some point it works, and you get through it. And typically when you finish one of these design colleges, they prepared you well enough such that you're pretty much like in the draft, where they come and select designers. So you're kind of like waiting for one of the companies to come get you. At least that time when I was studying, it was like that. So you're really prepared for the real world. And Ford had approached me and halfway through my studies and said, if you work for us when you graduate, we'll cover the rest of your studies for the last 2 years of the university. And of course I jumped for that, because well, financial worries are gone, and you already know you're going to have a job when you graduate. So I went for that, but they wanted to send me to Detroit, Mike, and I was very hesitant, because I knew that I spent some time in Detroit, and I knew it was a very dangerous city to live in, and I wanted to live. So I asked them if they could send me to their Ford of Europe design studio in Cologne, West Germany. And they said, sure, we'll make a position available and you can start there. So luckily I didn't end up in Detroit, and was able to start in Cologne, which was a fantastic experience. I mean, Ford of Europe is one of the best training grounds, I think, for a designer, because it's big. The variety of products are huge. The people there are very international. You have a lot of people. Most of the designers actually in that era, in the say around the late 80s, mid 80s, were Art Center trained, so you knew about them before you even started, and you got in, and kind of like a team. We went to the same university, and we had this kind of common background, and we all loved cars as kids. So yeah, couldn't have been a better start to my professional life, I guess.
That's fantastic. You got Mr. Henry Ford picking up the tab for this amazing education that you're getting out in beautiful sunny California. You must have felt like you were living the dream at that point.
I landed on my feet, Mike. I don't want to get into it too much, but when I first arrived, because what happened after school or after high school in Madrid, my father was expecting me to go down to work at the dealership, and that would be the rest of my life, and that was it. But I wanted to race motorcycles, so I had a friend who was racing. I went with him to a couple races, and obviously that virus got a hold of me. And I asked my father if I could race for a year or two, and he said, "Go ahead." So I started racing bikes, motorcycles, and went up the ladder very quickly till I got a factory ride, and I was doing very well around the world, but I never won a race. And so I realized, and my father realized at around 22, 23, that now it's time to get serious. So he either come work or go study. So I went off to study, but the very first day that I arrived at LAX airport in Los Angeles, I'm in the bus line to go from the airport to the city, to Pasadena. And it's about close to midnight, actually. It was a late flight. And the lady who was standing next to me in the bus line asked me, where are you coming from? And what are you doing here? And you got all your bags and suitcases, what's up? And I just mentioned to her, well, I've come over here to study, and, I'm new here. And luckily enough, I speak the language. And she said, well, where are you staying tonight? And I said, well, I'm supposed to head into town and find a hotel in Pasadena, and I'll be there until I find a more permanent place. And she said, you don't have to do that. I've got a big place in South Pasadena, and you're welcome to stay there. And I was a very innocent kid, 21, 22. When you're coming from Europe, you're still discovering life a little bit. But I thought, well, I'll trust her and see how it goes. Take a chance.
Sounds to me like, Frank, you met a cougar at the bus stop.
Well, it sounds like that, Mike, but we're still in touch. She turned out to be an angel. I swear. This lady basically put me up for over a year in her home, Marilyn Watson and her family. She had 2 children my age. They showed me around town. And that was a Sunday night when we met at the airport. And on the Monday, she took the day off of work, drove me around Pasadena, got me my bank account, my driver's license, registered an art center, and then said, would you need a part-time job? And I said, sure. And she got me a part-time job all on the first day. So I started, luckily, landing on my feet. But that's, some things in life just go right. Other times they go wrong, but this was one of the right times. So I landed in Southern California, and it went very well for the next 4 years. It was torture.
It certainly did. So, Frank, now we need to move on. We've been speaking for 25 minutes already. We need to move on. Cars, right? So, you graduate out of college. You get up. Obviously, Ford are paying for your education, so you go and work at the Ford Design Studio back in Europe.
Back in Europe, straight into Cologne, and I was going to work there for 5 years. That was my plan, and then see how it went. So as long as they didn't throw me out the door, after a year or two and say we miscalculated with this guy, I was going to see if I could get about 5 years under my belt and then rethink where I would be going after that, if I was going to be going anywhere, which did happen. Obviously, you don't want to stay in one place too long. There's no reason to change sometimes, and there wasn't any reason to change. But I kind of got antsy, and I'd done a good project there, and it was kind of like a feather in my cap. I had a great, you know the project very well. It was a feather in my cap in terms of being able to say on my resume I'd done something, could be considered a good design. And then I thought, okay, now is the time to move on and see if I can move up the ladder a little bit. Not wanting to, not just purposely thinking I'm just going to get out of here. This was, if I'm going to do something, I want to move upwards a little bit. And Germany's full of great car companies. I mean, awesome. As good as it gets.
Don't start moving to Germany just yet. I want to talk about the massive, huge elephant in the whole of the Escort Cosworth room. Let's talk about it very quickly, because lots of controversy over it, especially since we did it on the show. So you're at Ford. You get given a bit of a job, which is come up with some designs for the very successful Escort Cosworth already, but they come up with some designs for it. and then you put pen to paper, and I want you to explain the story in your own proper way, and you come up with this, ladies and gentlemen, which is quite possibly one of the best things you've ever seen in your life. I'll put it up on full screen. There you go. Look at that. How is that not just amazing? So tell us, Frank, the third wing, the free wing Escort Cosworth.
Okay, Mike, so there's not much of an Escort there, to tell you the truth. It might look like an Escort, but under the skin, that thing is it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Although it doesn't really look much like a sheep, it's got a bit more of an aggressive nature to it. But under that skin, it was basically a prepared, high performance, looks almost like a 4-seater family car, but this thing went like a bat out of hell, out of there. Yeah. So, and anybody who got their hands on one either stole it or bought it and kept it for the rest of their life and probably still have it. It's one of the iconic cars of the last century in terms of, sheep and wolf clothing kind of, or wolf in sheep's clothing kind of car. This is the Escort Cosworth. Now, I wouldn't even call it the Escort. I'd call it the Ford Cosworth. Ford had a really good relationship with Cosworth, and they put a great engine into it. And typically, when you get a car like this, the whole problem is not the performance. It's about keeping that performance going to the ground or sticking the wheels on the ground. And obviously, you want to keep that car stuck in all conditions. So at high speed, cars tend to lift up in the back. Air gets underneath them and a bit of aerodynamics, and the car gets light on the rear wheel, so you're not transferring enough power. So I'm 26, 27 years old first project thinking, I got to do something on this car that not only makes it unique and distinctive, but also does it on the performance side that makes it worthwhile of using all that performance. I didn't know a heck of a lot. I'd studied aerodynamics, obviously, in the university. But I just thought that I'm sitting here in Germany. I've got to inject a little bit of German character to this German Ford. Now, let's see. Planes do the opposite of cars. They fly and they create lift. But I took a wing and turned it upside down. I'm generally going to do what Formula One cars is, create a wing that pushes the car down. One is not enough, right? If you put two on, you'd think, well, it's going to stick twice as much. And if you put three on them, where do you stop? So I started thinking, I can't really fit more than three on the back of there. There's that relationship, obviously, with Baron von Richthofen, who was the Red Baron, famous World War I pilot. And I was thinking of that Fokker DR1, which I'd loved since I was a kid. And I thought, well, why not just put three wings on it? We can create the story that it was influenced by the Fokker DR1, which obviously it was. We're going to create more downforce one way or the other. Let's go for it. And all the sketches started really getting people excited about it. And my studio manager was like, or exec, he was an exec. He's like, I think we got something potentially very strong with this wing here. We can't talk about it because if we talk about it too much, we might wind people up and we might get somebody who doesn't like it. So let's just do it undercover. So we had a team made, and basically this team was sort of like a hit team or like offsite kind of mission type group. We developed the third wing, and man, it looked absolutely awesome. I mean, when you see it here, pretty much that's it. But developing it when you're not used to seeing something like that for the first time, it ticked all the right boxes. It did the job. It looked fantastic. It was unique. It was sudden brand character that we hadn't had before, but showed the racing side. And so that combination of making something work design-wise that actually worked was a hit. I mean, we all wanted it. And then obviously when you go through the development, you find out that it's working, you stick to your guns. The problem is with Ford being a cost-driven or cost-conscious company, they're always in the end looking for ways to pinch a few pennies away from the project. And it ran into that hiccup that some guy from finance, he was a guy that he wasn't even a car guy, he was a numbers guy. And that really is what tees you off as a designer, that somebody can wield so much power that isn't really that passionate about the product in the first place. So he's looking at ways to advance his career by saving money. And I'm looking at ways to advance my career by adding style and power. And he won out. Those are one of the points in your career which you think I'll never do that again. But you have no choice. You have
Yeah.
to listen to some people. And we knocked some money off the project, off the cost of the car, and made some money on it. But I think it lost a lot of the character that it potentially could have had. And thanks to you guys, you brought it back to life. You showed the world what it could have been like.
Well, we just wanted to relive a man's dream. We just wanted to do that and realise that dream for you, and make it physical, get it out there so the world can see it. And the best thing for us, people are still talking about it today. And
I mean, Mike, that's fantastic. I mean, obviously, people are going to like it, and other people aren't going to like it. That always happens in anything you design. You can't really control people's.
The argument is, Frank, if it came out as originally intended, so it appeared on the market like that picture, and then people took a wing away, they would moan that it looks awful because there's a wing missing. So we're never going to win that argument. But for me, I think it looks beautiful. Plus, we proved for a wind tunnel that the downforce actually works.
Yeah.
You had, at that time, you had Carlos Sainz winning the World Championships in a Ford Escort Cosworth for you. And I think it's fair to say that Carlos Sainz would have probably dominated for maybe another 1 or 2 years after that if they'd adapted that third wing Cosworth into the rally car because we proved the downforce worked.
Potentially. I mean, the leads by which he won could have been much bigger.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
Win-win.
I love that car, and thank you very much for sharing that story. It's an absolutely amazing story. Look, that's you doing it there, that young man right there.
Yeah, that's what happens to all of us at some point.
It is all of us. So you now you move from Ford, and then you skipped on early. You was going to say you went from Ford, but you got the 3 big German brands. You got Audi, Mercedes, and BMW, the 3 big German brands. And of course, you're an upstart. You're a young lad. You've already established that you can be in America, you can be in England, you can be in Morocco. So you're international. And all of a sudden, there's this lure coming from Germany, and you think, I'm going to go and work for one of the 3 big German giants.
Absolutely, yeah. There was, I mean, in those days, Porsche was a great company, or has always been a great company, but I always had that feeling that Porsche just kind of repeats and repeats and repeats. And great car company, but you're going to end up doing a 911 kind of like you did it last time. And they hadn't come out with the 928 for me back in the 70s was a masterpiece. It was ahead of its time, but the 911 was the real Porsche, and I just didn't really fancy going and designing 911s. For a period. So I had my eyes out for Audi, and I had it out for Mercedes-Benz and BMW, obviously. The thing is that BMW said we're not hiring, but you're welcome to come down to Munich and show us your portfolio, and we'll keep you on record, let you know if anything ever comes up. And again, luckily enough, they did say, when I had the interview with them, they said on the spot, you can start as soon as you can start. And for me, that was the words I wanted to hear from BMW, because BMW was the brand that, in the early 90s, there was the 3 Series, the 5 Series, and the 7 Series, and that was about it. They had the 8, obviously, coming out and things. That was good, too. But basically, BMW was just 3 car segments, and I thought this has got to be a company that's going to be growing in the future. Who doesn't want to live in Munich, that awesome location in Germany. And I'd already, learned the language, so I was already feeling settled in Germany. So that was for me a no-brainer. I went straight to Munich from Cologne and settled in fairly quickly. Loved it because Munich is one of the prettier cities in Europe and very inspirational for any type of cultural events and art and all that. So I loved it. And as things went, for certain reasons I won't get into now, we didn't really have a design boss for the 2 years I was there. We had one when I had the interview, but certain circumstances that one day we'll speak about it under a nice. I know
the story, but it's not for this viewing.
Well, then we had Chris come in 93, Chris Bangle, and that was the time when we actually bought Rover, when BMW picked up Rover Group, and they wanted to do a new, use the Land Rover technology and develop a new vehicle segment for BMW, which would be the SAV or SUV segment. And that's the first job I started to work on at BMW. The SUV.
So you arrive at BMW as an upstart. You've just left Ford.
Yeah.
You arrive at BMW. They've got 3 cars in their product range. They've got 3 to 5 to 7.
Mm-hmm.
They look at you and said, "We've just acquired Land Rover. We've got this footprint. This is what we got, a footprint. And what we want you to do is just be creative. Go out there. We want an SUV. Go and create an SUV."
Yeah.
So was it as simple as that?
Yeah.
Really? As simple as that. So they got 3 cars. And when you think about how mad that is, I think BMW probably have something like 30 cars in their product range now. But back then, 3 cars. And now look at you going with this brand new segment that's now making headways around the world. This segment was so new. I think BMW, one of the first SUV manufacturers other than something in America at that time.
Yeah.
But they're saying to you, "We've got this footprint from Land Rover. It's a 4x4 footprint. Please go and design something."
Yeah, pretty much like that, Mike. I mean, on one side you can say it's pressure, but on the other hand, how can you get it wrong? You can't make anything worse than it already is. There wasn't a segment in BMW, so it's pretty much take BMW values. You know, if you understood the company, you just don't go off and design a car. You also obviously have to understand the company and where they were. You know, if you don't look back, you can't move forward because you don't know where you're going. So a little bit of research, obviously, and understand what makes a BMW a BMW. And there wasn't a huge variety in their range anyways. You know, Chris Bangle used to say that BMWs were like sausages, but just cut in 3 different lengths. So there wasn't a lot of difference. He had a bit of...
he's so inspiring, Frank. God, he's so inspiring. He really is.
But anyways, he said, just go down to Italy because you're not going to be allowed to work here on the weekends. And I need to see something in 6 weeks. So get your butt down to Turin, Italy. There's a few design houses there that will provide the services of building the design for you. And, you know, you got 2 hours on the flight on Sunday, sketch it out, and then start on Monday and come back in 6 weeks. Let's see what you can come up with. So landed in Turin on a Sunday afternoon, went straight to the hole-in-the-wall shop where they were going to make this this model for us. And I've repeated this experience a few times, but it's always so it still amazes me. The translator rolls up the Rollo door, and there's these 3 Italian gentlemen in their 70s in plaster-covered overalls smoking their little fags, you know, the little cigarettes with their espresso. And I think, oh my gosh, you know, I was expecting, well, we had 18-hour days, 7 days a week for 6 weeks. But my first reaction was, one of these guys or at least 2 of them weren't going to survive. You know, this is going to be too intense for them. And I don't know how they're going to hold up for that length of period. And the translator said, man, don't worry. These are the same 3 guys that did the Miura in the 60s. They know what they're doing. Well, I think I dropped to my knees immediately thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in front of the holy trinity of modelers, you know. They have done amazing projects. They stuck together, a great team.
So they Raphael, Michelangelo, and Da Vinci.
Yeah, that was their unofficial names. Let's put it that way. Yeah, so we came around. We did it, Mike. We pulled off those long working hours, and in 6 weeks, we managed to build a full-size BMW SUV. And of course, we didn't have a name to it, but it was just the funny thing was, it looked like a BMW because of those little. When you're designing, you got to pull a little bit here, a little bit there, and then it speaks the BMW language. You know, when you start letting go of those things because you want to be too, I don't know, you got enough responsibility to do what you want to do. But if you lose that connection with the company, you're just pleasing yourself, you know. And at the end of the day, that's not what the job's all about. So by
Frank,
doing that,
how long would it? You know, you've just said 5 weeks. You've got this model in 5. How long would it take when you worked, which we get to when you work at McLaren? How long does it take normally to go from a drawing to a clay model?
Takes 6 months to get to a drawing.
6 months to get to a drawing. How long to get from a drawing to a clay?
Yeah, and you probably got 3 guys working 3 different designs, so that in 6 months you can choose 2 directions. You know, of the 3 designers, you narrow it down after 6 months to 2. Then you probably go another 6 months, and you choose 1 at the end of that year of the 2 designs. So after a year, you've probably got a sketch. that you can say, okay, this is what the car is going to look like. And then you take that sketch and then you transfer it to a quarter scale model, clay model, which isn't even full size. This is just your first shot at making the design. And you'll do that, and you'll probably have two halves on the clay model. So one half is one idea, and the other half is a version of that idea.
Yeah.
And then that'll take you probably another 6 months. And then in the last half, coming up to 2 years, you'll start to go full size on it. And probably after 2 years, you'll have a full size clay model to evaluate. We did it in 6 weeks. No changes, Mike. The only change that ever happened, and I remember this specifically, was that when I did that, we had the rear spare wheel, the rear spare tire, on the back of the car. And that was the only thing that got changed towards production for the X5. We put the wheel underneath.
They migrated it underneath.
Yeah, yeah. And nowadays, we don't even have a spare wheel. You know, you get this goo or spray or whatever. But we get rid of spare tires now, or space-saving tires. But yeah, that was the only change that happened. We brought it back after 6 weeks. We had a incredible engineering director at BMW during those years. It was Dr. Wolfgang Reitzler, really nice guy. He was kind of like Errol Flynn, you know, had that look and that character about him. Anyways, he was the man. He looked at the car when we brought it back. We had it out on the third floor of the development center of BMW, outside in the courtyard, up in the sky. And he gave it a couple laps, went clockwise, went counterclockwise, and go, that's it. That's going straight into production like that. Don't change it. But we did change the wheel. Yeah, it was the fastest car ever to go into production. And it was a brand new BMW, so that was a good one.
6 weeks from drawing to clay model to signed off in 6 weeks.
Yeah, well, we didn't do a clay, Mike. In Italy, they don't work so much with the older guys. Don't work with clay. They work with plaster, which is even more incredible because plaster, you got to put it on and wait for it to dry.
Yeah.
You know, it takes a long time. Basically, with clay, you slap it on and you're ready to go. Right. This thing, you had to actually put the plaster on, let it set, go around, work on another side of the car, come back, work there. But they were masters. I mean, it was awesome to watch these guys work. You know, I wanted them to do it slower or take longer. We had 6 weeks, but it was a learning experience, I tell you.
Wow, really what a story! So there you are. That must be obviously one of your pivotal moments. You bring then one of the biggest selling, most popular SUVs globally around the world. It was the good thing about the X5 as well. The X5 wasn't a German car. It wasn't a British car. It was a global car. So you bring a global car to BMW that you can see sell in China, Japan, and North America, Canada, South America. You selling all over the world.
The brief turned out after we did it, Mike. The brief then was developed for the car by the marketing team after they saw it. And the brief that would be transmitted to the public was, this car has to be a car for everything. You have to be able to go to the opera with it. You have to be able to take the kids to football or soccer practice. You have to go off-road. You have to do the long cross-country touring with it. So this has got to be a car for everything. So it did that. And, you know, it was kind of like the stepping stone, the first building block for the whole SUV market. I think, you know, that people started realizing this car does quite a bit. You know, this is the only car we actually need. So it took off. It did really well.
I mean, really, it possibly too well, if you think about it, because it undoubtedly that car at that time, which other manufacturers then cottoned onto, would have taken sales away from 7 Series and 5 Series, because people that were buying BMWs would go, well, I'll just get the one that does everything, rather than the one that's a limousine and the one that's a kind of executive express. I'll just get the one that feels like all of them, and I can go off-road in it as well.
Absolutely. And women were driving in something that we called command driving position. So from the high hip point, if they're sitting in it, women felt extra safe, extra protected, because they were looking down on everybody else. You know, I'm up here, I'm in a safe zone, I feel in control. So a lot of women were buyers of this vehicle, or telling their husbands or partners, you got to buy that car because that's what I want.
I've got a lot of people, Frank, panicking online. You know what I'm panicking? Because they're looking at the clocks and they're going, oh my God, this needs to be a series. I can't believe these stories. We haven't got enough time. Seriously, guys, there, both, and I think I'm speaking for Frank here because we spoke earlier, there is no time limit. There is no clock on this. We can talk until you switch off. So we are now going to, but I understand people want to get on with their evenings. So we're going to move forward. Your next car, you're now working for BMW.
Yeah.
You're very British. You're English speaking. You're working for BMW. So surely somebody at BMW turns to you after the success of the X5 and they go, Frank, we got a great idea. We just bought Rover, right? Which is where we got the Land Rover. We just bought Rover, and we're thinking within the brand that we bought, we own Mini. So why don't we give you the chance to redesign what is quite possibly the most difficult design job on the planet? We're giving you the chance to redesign a Mini and bring a new Mini to the world. Now, I'm going to speak frankly here. For me, I would have shit myself. I would have run a mile, because you can't mess with an icon. You can't. If you get it wrong, you're going to be known forever as the guy that sunk Mini. Yeah. But if you get it right, you're going to be known forever as the guy that created the new Mini. So you're still quite young at this point. That must have been either the most terrifying or exciting period of your life.
Tell you the truth, Mike, it was the most exciting time in my life.
That's what I think.
No, I mean, the pressure, obviously the pressure is there. You don't want to get something like the Mini wrong. I mean, the Mini is the iconic car of the 20th century. I think it was voted number one. You know, of all the cars in the world, the one that most people knew is the Mini. Very nice cars from the 20th century, but if you had to name one that had the most massive impact, not only, because it was designed for a purpose, it wasn't just another car. It had a real purpose in what Alec Castigonis had to come up with, quite a genius to come up with a car that really revolutionized the industry. But yeah, I mean, the pressure was on, but at the beginning, it didn't happen that way, Mike. It was BMW, I think, were the ones that were, as you put it, shitting themselves, because they realized that they had Rolls-Royce in the brand. So they had Rolls-Royce, and their idea was, let's do a strategy, a 3-pillar strategy. We'll have Rolls-Royce at the top. We'll have BMW as the bulk volume, and we'll do a small car to support the other end of the market. So we'll have Mini, BMW, and Rolls-Royce. Okay, let's do that. But we cannot screw up Mini, because obviously it's a British car. We're a German company. If the Germans try to reinterpret an English car and get it wrong, I mean, it's like, get hung for that. So we have to be really, really careful that we get the design right. So if you're going to go hunting and you want to catch something, you're not going to shoot it with a pistol. You're going to shoot it with a Gatling gun or a shotgun. So it doesn't matter how many bullets you shoot, you're going to come close and hit it. So the idea with BMW was, instead of doing the normal 3-car design process where we have 3 themes developed, and then we narrow it down to 2, and then after a couple of years, we'll finally end up with one idea, which is a long, drawn-out and expensive process. They basically decided to break the camel's back, the budget, and go all out and develop 15 total designs proposals for the new Mini. So they said, if we spread the designers out around the world, we get sort of an input from our German studios, from the UK studios, from the US, we'll get some inputs, and obviously from the capital of design, Turin, our friend Giugiaro, we'll be able to put 15 design proposals together. One of them has to hit the target. I mean, we'd be pretty bad if we didn't hit the target with one of them. So they put all their eggs into that basket and thought, okay, let's see if what comes out of this design process, and if one kind of is the one that we think, then and we all kind of agree on it, that'll be the one that we'll go with as the 21st century Mini. So I was one of 15 designers around the world, and we had a great shootout at the Gaydon Motor Heritage Center up in Warwickshire. And that was a very Motor Heritage Center, it's called. And we had a range of 15 cars spanned out. After 6 months, we had arrived at that stage where all 15 cars could be seen. And it went down to 7 execs and 7 Rover execs, 7 BMW execs, deciding which is going to be the new Mini. And of those 15, there was a unanimous decision, so that was really good. 14.0 for the one I did. Not because, you know, everybody didn't like the other ones, but I think it was the most logical approach for the new Mini. It kept the genes or the DNA of the original, and it had that kind of new technology look to it. So, yeah, it was the start of an amazing project. Absolutely.
Yeah, but there's some little things in this story that we got to pull out. I have to. I know we've got so much to talk about, but I have to pull them out. First of all, when you're designing, Alec Isagonis clearly is a hero of yours. The guy's a genius. Mm-hmm. You make a car that not only spans generations, but a car that becomes completely and utterly classless. It's the most. It can be driven by the Queen or driven by the plumber. So he creates this amazing design that becomes an icon globally around the world. And then you get tasked with that job. And of course, as you said, you can't cock this up. You're working for a German brand in England. You can't cock this up. So you have to take design cues from the original Mini and bring them into the modern Mini without ruining whatever is going to be, you know, airbag, side impact protection, thicker C-pillars. You have to put those design cues in. And you've got Mr. Accountant. You're remembering your Cosworth days where somebody's going, you can't do that because we ain't got enough money. You've got all of that going on. And you have to create a car that you can put in the marketplace and still today is a massive global success. And you must think to yourself, how do I get this right? What do I take away from the original car and put into this car that's going to make people understand it? And one of those things for me, and one of the design cues from that original Mini, is the simple A-pillar, that little A-frame at the front, a little A-plate at the front, which is incorporated into the clam bonnet. Yeah,
that's definitely there. Well, that car, I mean, Mike, we look at that car and instantly it's recognizable as a very unique looking car. There's so many elements you can pick off a Mini that you don't see on any other car. And basically all it is taking those elements and refreshing in them in a way that to today's engineers, or at that period, the new engineers would look at it as saying, yeah, that's Mini-esque. Yet we can't build it because that is impossible to do. Then you've hit it on the head because you can basically do anything. An engineer will find the way if he's got enough gumption or desire to do it. He'll find a way to make the impossible possible, as they say. So as long as I could come up with impossible solutions to futurizing the character of the Mini, that was going to be the new design. So obviously I had to keep the plant-on roof. I had to keep generally something happening in the middle of the car where the glass is. And that was a bit of freedom there because I thought, I don't want to put normal pillars because that's very much relating to the original Mini. But I keep the pillars and put them behind the glass. You'll have a modern architectural feel to it. A lot of buildings, when you see them, the modern ones, they look like they don't have any structure. All glass. Looks really nice. You're wondering, how's that thing even standing up? Well, they put all the structure behind the glass. So we could do the same thing. So the Mini has all those pillars behind the glass, gave it a very up-to-date look. Then you start working from the front backwards. You realize, okay, it's got to have round headlights, but upright headlights don't work these days. We're all looking for better aerodynamics. Kick them back a little bit. Porsche 911 has beautiful headlamps. That was a bit of the inspiration. But obviously, as you go back, like you said, you have first the short overhangs on the car. That was a Mini, almost zero overhang. So as long as I keep the space from the front of the wheel to the front of the bumper small, that would start to give it that lively look, I guess you could say, small and compact and, you know, struggling to get out of its tight jeans kind of thing. And then basically you work back, like you said, the diagonal weld flange that we had on the original Mini. Why not turn that into the shut line for the clamshell bonnet instead of having
genius
fenders? You recognize it immediately as being Mini-esque. There's no other car that had that.
No.
And I turned it into a functional line. It was, I guess it was genius, but it wasn't, you know, I mean, I thought about it. I thought, well, yeah, let's do it. It seemed kind of easy, but it worked really well.
Yeah, but originally, did it have two wings and a bonnet? And then you thought, well, what if we clamshell it? It becomes a functional line.
Everything tends to simplify in design. Like we keep the same content. or actually more content, and we simplify. That's the trick in design, is to put more in and make it look like less. I mean, you know, the first phones we had, the cell phones that had the battery and the phone with all the today we've got something that looks, if we would have shown somebody an iPhone or any other phone, you know, 20 years ago and say this is what phones are going to look like, they wouldn't believe
like
it.
a piece of glass these days.
Yeah. So that was the same thing with the Mini. Get rid of the two fenders and the hood or the bonnet and make it into one piece, and do the cut line in such a way that it's a functional cut line and reminds you of the old Mini. So I kept that old emotional connection and character of the original Mini, but in kind of impossible ways. That bonnet was impossible to press. The first shot at pressing the panels on that bonnet failed miserably. We couldn't get that shape out of it, but there was a solution. And then you work back, and obviously the door handles are important, the fuel cap, the proportions, the way the stance of the body and the proportions sit. Then you start getting to the back, and you start looking at the taillights to treat those as Mini-esque type taillights, very unusual. Obviously the exhaust, we all know that. And then you sort of...
No. You can't, Frank, you can't throw that away. I know we're time's cooking on, but you can't. Well, we all know that. I know it because you've told me over one of these. I know the exhaust.
Yes.
Hold on. Yeah. But they don't know the exhaust story.
Okay. Shall I explain it?
Make it really short, Frank.
I'll make, well, it is short. The exhaust pipe isn't that long. It was very stubby, Mike. No, so what happened was the night before the big I'll keep it as compact as I can. The night before the presentation, we had everything looking perfect on the car. You have to understand it's not a real car. It's a clay car that's been painted, but you have all the shut lines and all the pieces that are chrome. So the car from 30 feet away looks like a real car. And I had to get home because it was 4 a.m. We'd been working up to the last minute. The show was going to be in 6 hours at 10 a.m. We'd already started celebrating around midnight because it looked fantastic. This was October 95. And the clay modelers, of course, being English, they like their drinks and things. So around 4 a.m., they weren't much good for anything else. And I had to get home. So I made one last lap around the car to make sure everything was looking fine. It stuck on properly. And I froze behind the car because there's always one thing left that you forget. And I realized that we hadn't put an exhaust pipe on the back of the Mini. And I told the clay modeler, the head clay modeler, he wasn't drunk yet. He was on Budweiser. And I said, Colin, we got to put an exhaust pipe on. How did we ever forget that? And he says, it's just a model. It doesn't matter. Who's going to care if it has an exhaust pipe on it? I said, Colin, the original Mini, the back of the Cooper had this exhaust pipe that was so dramatic. We've got to put something on. And he says, well, look, they can't do it. They're flat on their backs. 4 a.m. I'm not going to start making an exhaust pipe for you. So I said, give me your can, Colin. And that Bud can to this day is just unbelievable. It's just like a Coke can. You cut it off in half, throw away the top half of it, polish it up. You have an alloy looking color. You got that nice rib section on the bottom of it. In the bottom, I put a nice big hole in it, shoved it into the clay, and we started laughing our heads off because we were a little bit tipsy, obviously, but it just looked incredible. And so we left it on, and the next day in the show, obviously the car went down really well, and my boss, Chris Bangle, came up to me and said, Frank, great job. This is going to put a real good feather in your cap for the rest of your career. Congratulations, but never, ever waste a guy's time or a modeler's time making such a detailed exhaust pipe for a car like this. And I was too embarrassed. I couldn't tell him it took me 4 minutes, and then it was a beer can. I kept quiet. I didn't say anything. So a couple years later, the supplier comes up and says, okay, Mr. Stephenson, how would you like your exhaust pipe finisher to be? And I had this can on my table. I said, well, this is it. He didn't know what he was looking at, but he measured it, and they produced it. And from 2000 to 2006, the Mini Cooper, if you look at it, has a Budweiser beer can hanging off the back. We weren't allowed to talk about that. So.
Get in. Now, for those people out there listening, I know this story because we spoke about them, but isn't that just the best thing ever? That is just the best thing ever. We haven't even spoke about the wing mirrors.
Oh, my gosh. How young? I mean, we can't have too young of an audience.
No, we haven't even spoke about that. Nick Innocent out there, one of our fans who was in the audience at the NEC, and he said, who listened to the wing mirror story, and he said he's just messaged in, and he said that they still need nipple indicators.
Mike, they had nipples. They had. Oh, I did tell you that.
He's saying that you need to bring them back.
Yeah, but then it got too obvious. I mean, that was the problem with the nipple, with the indicators in the position on this beautifully shaped mirror, a beautifully shaped mirror. It just became too obvious what it was. So we had to get rid of the indicators. Although the location of the indicators was as good as it gets. I mean, why would you put them anywhere else?
Why would you? Can I synopsis the story? Is it embarrassing for me to say the story?
Not if you tell it, Mike. That's fine.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, next time you look at a Mini 1, walk up to a Mini 1 and it's wing mirror on either side of the car. Walk up to that wing mirror and just cut the shape of the wing mirror. And you are holding Linda, Mrs. Stephenson's jugs. They are modelled on Frank's wife. And originally they were designed with a nipple indicator in the lens as well.
Yeah.
BMW, that was a bit too sticky, so that was removed. But yeah, next time you walk up to a mirror, hold on to it. I sleep with one every night. I love it.
Fantastic. Okay, I won't get in trouble for that then.
No, you won't get. I said it, Frank. Didn't say it. You will not get in trouble. Frank, I'm just gonna fly through some things here.
Sure.
I want the audience to know. So BMW X5, Mini, Ferrari F430, Maserati MC12, Ferrari FXX. Oh my God, one of the most amazing cars on the planet. The Maserati GranSport, the Fiat 500. And then life for you takes a different turn and you end up working for McLaren, but head of design at McLaren.
Yeah, yeah. Well, McLaren at that point didn't exist, Mike. That was the big challenge. In 2008, I got a phone call, and Ron Dennis, Anthony Sheriff, great bunch of guys that were already there, were thinking about the way to keep McLaren going in light of the fact that perhaps Formula One wouldn't be long lasting. It could always go the other way, and then there would be a problem because McLaren being a Formula One based race company, they needed to make sure that the business was sustainable, the company was sustainable. So the great idea they had was, let's develop a road car company, as Ferrari's had. Many other companies have had always a race division and a road car division. So the solution was, let's build a road car division, except that you can't just build any car if you're working with that kind of McLaren philosophy. It has to be best of the best, obviously, and you're coming in at the top with the heavyweights. You're coming in with Ferrari, Lamborghini, all the great brands that are doing the sports cars and supercars. So Ron's brief was, let's come in with a supercar first, and then we'll move up to a hypercar, and then we'll do a sports car. So we're developing, because I had to tell him I don't do race cars. I'd love to do them, Ron, but I've been doing road cars all my life. And he said, no, that's what we're going to do. And the attraction was incredible, Mike, because they say working with a brand like Ferrari is every car designer's dream. I tell you what, if you get the chance to develop a car brand language, design language, for a company at the level of McLaren from the get-go with a clean sheet of paper, I mean, that's pressure, but at the same time, what a challenge.
Amazing.
These things don't happen normally in somebody's life. You don't get the chance to have that shot at that position. So there's no way I was going to say no or doubt it or anything. You run for it as quickly as you can get out of Italy and run to England. That's what I did. And obviously the world's your oyster. You got Formula One engineers instead of normal car engineers. Formula One engineers, all they want is next weekend the car to be a half a second faster around the track. So they'll do anything to make something happen. So you got this depth of engineering at McLaren that you can make anything happen. And the trick was to make it happen in about 5 years so that we would get to that level that Ferrari and all the big guys were at, and then actually surpass them. Obviously, you got to create brand credibility and your client base and all that kind of stuff that works with dealerships to get the brand going. But we did that, and within about 5 years after starting there, we had not only the MP4-12C, but we've got the P1, which is the calling card. That's your maximum expression, your haute couture, we call it, of cars. When you get into that hypercar segment, that means forget the budget. Let's do the maximum, best performing, most wild car we can do. And then we got to present it to the world. And that's when the 918 came out from Porsche and the LaFerrari. It was one of those moments in time that will never happen again.
Yeah, it's the whole trinity of hypercars.
Yeah, the Holy Trinity, they called them,
Yeah.
We all came out around the same time. And I think that's when we really earned the respect of the press and the car community and the clients, customers, everybody. They started realizing, wow, McLaren's come in, they're fit, they're ready for the championship. And I think we knocked out a couple of them. We did before the 12th round. We did a couple.
You certainly did. I mean, you did some amazing cars, Frank. Not only did you do the P1, you did the 675 LT, the long tail, the 570S. One of my favourite all-time McLarens ever, and it is this one. And I had this car, the 720S. I had a P1 and a 720S on long-term loan, and I just thought they were just the most amazing cars ever. And
that's a car that you can take the children to school. You can go off-road with it. You can go to the opera.
Correct. You can do anything in it. It sounds very similar to the BMW X5, doesn't it, when you say it like that?
Yeah, joking.
So yeah, just an absolutely incredible car. And can I say, and this is a good one, Frank, you're going to love this little segue. I'm going to put this up on screen. So we're going to go from Frank Stephenson. You left BMW, right? And you then to Ferrari and Fiat, to Fiat 500 and all the rest of it. And then you end up at McLaren.
Yeah.
And you end up designing McLarens, and you end up designing cars that look like that, right? That's what you do, right? Ready? You're going to love this, Frank. Meanwhile, the company that you left in Germany, BMW, are currently been kicking on, and they are currently designing cars that look like that.
Oh, Mike, don't do this to me.
I'm sorry. I want to go and work on it in the future. I don't. But seriously, look at the grille on that car. That's it. That's a robot's ass, right? It's
yeah, there are a lot of different terms I've been reading the last couple of days about how to describe this. It's tough. I mean, my first question is why. There is no logical explanation to
BMW. Kidney grille is the kidney grille on a BMW. It's the most distinctive thing that you know about a BMW. The moment you walk up to a BMW, you know exactly what you're looking at.
Would you not say that's the family jewels of BMW?
No, look at this. I mean, what?
I mean, that's their most precious thing that they have to protect. That and a few other design elements. But the two kidneys on a BMW, if those don't hit the market or hit the mark, the bullseye, then you're gonna everything after that is kind of like having maybe a beautiful body, but the head is probably like a two-headed monster. It might turn you off pretty quickly. I can't explain for the life of me. I don't know why. I don't want to critique too much somebody else's design, but it keeps coming into my mind when I see that. Why?
So I'm just going to do it again, Frank. Sorry, I have to.
Okay.
This is the company you left. That's the company you left, had an amazing career, and that's what they've come up with. And this is the company you've recently left, and this is how you left them.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty radical too, Mike. I mean, nobody's ever seen that design language on the McLaren. It's very unique. And they say everything's been done before. Obviously, the grille on BMW on that 4 Series right there.
That's never been done before.
Well, if we look back in history, cars needed big radiators, needed big air intakes. But modern technology, you're getting away with a lot less air, or you're going electric or hybrid or whatever. I don't need to have 2 nostrils the size of that.
No, Frank, that's never been done before. Not unless, as soon as one of the Transformers sat down on a park bench, somebody from BMW run up and took an imprint of it. That is I think they've said. I heard a description once about a designer that
this designer was sent from Mercedes in the future back to the present day to destroy the brand. So this guy's from the future, and he's sent back to destroy BMW.
The Arnold Schwarzenegger of BMW.
Could be a bit of that. Yeah.
I have got to destroy the brand.
Believe me, you need it.
Frank, I've had so many questions coming. I can't answer them because me and you are just chatting away, and we haven't got to the juicy part yet about EV vehicles. And
as long as you want to go, Mike, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.
I want to just sort of put a cap on car design in a minute. But before I do, what's your favourite car you've designed?
People would probably expect me to say the Mini because it's a fun car and it's done very well, and it carried a lot of weight with it and did well and all that. But from a fun point of view, and saying that I want to, I would love to own this car and have one in my garage, which regrettably I don't have it. It would have to be the car that very few people have actually seen in real life. It's called the MC12, the Maserati MC12.
Maserati.
Well, I mean, there are not going to be a lot of dealers that would put their hands on this car in terms of, service, because it's pretty special. I'll tell you a story about that one, Mike. That's very interesting.
You do it. I'm going to find a picture of the car and I'm going to throw it up on the screen for the audience.
Okay. So the story on that car was in 2003, Maserati, which was the sister or the cousin company of Ferrari. They were intertwined, both owned by Fiat, by the way. But Maserati said, we're going to get back into racing because we got to relive our history and show them we also understand competition and high performance. Obviously, we can't go into Formula One because our sister or our brother Ferrari is in there. Let's go to FIA GT racing, which is endurance racing, 24-hour races, 12-hour races, that kind of racing. So we need a car that allow us to compete in that segment there, that championship series. And what most car companies do that do race in that series is they take a production car and tune it or modify it so that they can race in these long-distance endurance racers. But Maserati, in their Italian way, said, we're going to, that's it, Mike. We're going to come at it from a different angle. We're actually going to build a race car. We're going to turn it into a road car because you have to have at least 25 road cars homologated on the road to be able to race in this series. And obviously, if you're building a road car and you turn it into a race car, you've probably got thousands of them on the road already. But Maserati, in their infinite wisdom, said, let's build a race car, and we'll build 25 road cars, and then that'll get us into the championship. And we'll win, obviously, because we're building a race car. And when they took it to get the approval from the Federation in Paris, FIA, they looked at it and they said, what are you guys doing? You've built a race car. You're going to walk all over everybody. And, okay, you've sold 25 of them at quite a bit of money. But you've come in with too much of an advantage. So how long is your car? And we said 5 meters 15 long. And they said, okay, well, next year the rules are changing anyways. We're going to be a maximum of 5 meters long. And we said, well, wait a second. Now we've gone to the trouble of selling 25 of this at almost $1 million a pop. And now you want us to find, you want us to change the design. We're not allowed to race next year. We have to cut it back or do something. We said, well, it's up to you guys. So we had to go back to the drawing board, or I went back to the drawing board and cut 15 centimeters off the front of the car. And we sold another 25 of them, but we never told any of the customers. So there are 25 customers with a short nose and 25 with a long nose. And nobody's ever realized that they measure it. They'll realize they have one of the
That is fantastic.
And then the car went off and won 5 straight world championships.
Oh,
so pretty well.
So that's your most fun car, and no doubt. And I'm gutted you haven't got one sitting in your garage when you said I've got one. It's ridiculous. Surely, I think, and I know quite a few car designers. I always think, well, surely, if you design a car, the company give you one to put in your garage. So I'm gutted you never got that. I remember.
Everybody, please write to the company and tell them to give you one.
I remember. Somebody you do know, I remember Steve Mattin.
Yes.
Young Steve designed a Mercedes SL, Mercedes A-Class, and he did one of the SLs. Steve came to my house to pick me up. We was going to go to Goodwood together. Lad from Coventry, worked for Mercedes, and designed some amazing cars, A-Class and an SL. And he came to my house and picked me up in an A-Class. After we'd done the SL, we were on our way to Goodwood. to celebrate the launch of the new SL. And I went to him, Steve, why are you picking me up in this piece of crap? Yeah. And he said, because they won't give me one. I can't get my own car. He can buy one from a dealer, but he can't. And I'm like, if you design the car, you should have an MC. I mean, you must have, I always think you must have every McLaren, every BMW, every Mini, every X5, but you haven't.
No, I wish it was like that, Mike. It's a misconception. I'll tell you what, at Ferrari, my whole thing was, wow, I get to drive a Ferrari as a company car. I'm coming in as the first ever design director at Ferrari and Maserati. Man, I'm going to be driving a flash Ferrari. What did I get? What did I get? A 156 Alfa Romeo. I mean, that's what everybody drove. All the guys who had pretty good positions at Ferrari and Maserati, they get no higher than a 156, maybe a 166. It was a 169. It was 166. That was the maximum you got. And you're thinking, what, you know.
I had a meeting, Frank. Oh, don't tell me you cut off again.
Nope, you don't get one.
You're still there. You're joined back in again in a minute automatically. Okay. I had a meeting. Let me put you up on screen. I'll put you up on screen here. I had a meeting once with the head of Ferrari PR in the UK. Great guy, Jason Harris, good friend of mine. And Jason turned up to this meeting, and I'm thinking, I know when Jason turns up because he's the head of the PR, so he's going to turn up in a Ferrari. I'll recognise him because he's going to be in a Ferrari. Well, he turned up in a Fiat Tipo. I said, that can't be real. Where's your Ferrari? And he went, no, all I get is a Fiat Tipo. That's my company. That was my car.
Yeah, well, maybe they want to keep you hungry. Maybe that's the trick. I don't know.
I think it is. I think they just want to keep you hungry. That's about it. So Frank, we need to. I'll wait for the video to kick back in so we can get you back on. Until then, we're just going to talk about where you are in the future. So you've left McLaren. Why did you leave McLaren? Why on earth would somebody leave McLaren?
Well, I was pretty set because obviously McLaren is in a design world, car design world. It's about as good as it gets. Because the company was doing great. There was a lot of future products in line. But after you've done 9 or 10 years at a company, at a car company, you realize that what you're starting to do after that first generation is to repeat yourself. And of course, if you haven't gotten to that level, you're probably thinking, you know, what a crazy decision. But once you've done that level, then it's typically in a lot of people who are, you know, trying to always grow, you always want to do something that's a little bit more challenging. And I thought, if I stay here at McLaren, I'm going to be repeating the whole thing all over again. I'll be doing the sports car or leading the team that's doing the sports car, the supercar, and the hypercar. And basically, we've already done that. We'll just be building on top of that already success that we had gained with those 3 ranges. And although it's appealing to keep doing the supercars and that, I thought I've got to get out now while I'm still recognized, I guess, in the industry, and do something that probably reaches a few more people than the market that McLaren has. In other words, you know, there might be about 3,000-4,000 people in the world a year, maybe a little bit more now, that are able to afford a McLaren and drive one. So the idea was, you're doing something good. You're bringing supercar and hypercar technology eventually will trickle down to the mass cars. But at the same time, if I get out now and I choose my own projects, I can create basically my own design company. My name's out there. I'll use that as a springboard to start doing other products that basically can have a lot more influence on people than just doing, you know, highly desirable cars. So that's what I did. I got out, established a design company, my design company, and the project started rolling in. I had to create a few filters to make sure that the projects I was working on were valid projects in terms of doing what I wanted them to accomplish. And it's been going very well since then. I haven't stopped and just keeps getting busier and busier.
So you've become your own design house. So you've become the Giugiaro or the Pininfarina of
Mini Pininfarina. Because
I wouldn't say mini Pininfarina. I'd say Well, Frank Stephenson.
Well, the reputation is there, yeah.
I know, I can feel it. There's maybe a little bit of embarrassment saying Frank Stephenson and Pininfarina, but don't. No, it's Pininfarina.
Yeah,
They did great stuff. You're Frank Stephenson. You're still alive.
Mike, it doesn't roll off the tongue like Pininfarina, you know?
Yeah, you should have changed your name at Depot, Frank, many years ago. But you are Frank Stephenson. So you've got this design house. Tell us, so you're bringing in designers. So tell us a little bit about the ethos of your design house. What's your charter? What's your message?
Yeah, well, like I said, Mike, I got to pick and choose projects carefully because, you know, once you've sort of set your name out there, then you want to be sure that whatever you're working on carries a certain value or ethic, I guess you could say, and you just don't want to do any project. So the nice thing is obviously being able to choose the projects, but what I want to make sure is that each new project I get commissioned with, be it a car, be it a product for the house or whatever product it is, that it meets what I call 4 values. One, obviously, is that it has to be the best in its segment. In other words, it makes no sense to design something just to be another one in the pack. This target has to be the best. The product has to be the best in its segment. The second one, obviously, is that it has to bring in new technology and new innovation. It has to be innovative in the market. So it's not just repeating what's already been done. The third is that in this day and age, it's ever more important to think about the environment. So we have to be very sustainable with the product. So everything about the product is about sustainability and fits into the new world order. And the fourth is my favorite, which means that the design of the product or of the whatever project I'm on, the design has to be influenced by biomimicry, which is the inspiration from nature, which is the ultimate and most intelligent inspiration we can use, I think, firmly believe in for design. So as long as those 4 values are allowed on the project or considered to be the main points of the project, then those are the projects I've been working on.
Frank, that's amazing. I mean, I want to go and work there immediately. It's a design house. I mean, I can't design shit, Frank. I'll be honest with you.
That's all right.
I can't. I'm quite good at
graphics too, Mike.
I can fix old cars up. That's about it. That's all I know in the world. But, I've never designed anything in my life that I can put onto an old car that's well.
I'm sure you do. You're wired differently. We're all wired in a certain way.
That's a very fair point. We are all wired differently. Now, you've been talking a lot, not only about the designs that you've done, about the ethos that you have embraced, but you've also been talking a lot recently on your own YouTube channel about some of the cars that you've done in the past. You're breaking the stories apart a little bit, expanding the stories. Tell us about the success of your YouTube channel and also where people can find you.
Yeah, well, it's my name basically, Frank Stephenson, and it's a series that I'm starting with. So it will go on for quite a bit, and obviously branch out into much more interesting or diverse subjects. But at the beginning, it's how I designed ... So we're going through about 14 or 15 cars that I'm responsible for, and I dissect it down to sort of the interesting parts of the design that are stories that most people haven't heard about, which kind of show the way a designer thinks. And I do it on the spot. So forgive me if the sketches that I'm doing don't look super polished. It's because I'm doing it right there on the spot without any pre-thinking or anything. I'm just spitting it out as it comes into my mind. A great friend of mine, Kane Chatty, is doing the actual putting together and cutting it and doing all the nice parts of it. But basically, I just sit there and describe how a designer thinks when he's working on a real project. And all the projects are cars that have been put into production, and most people will recognize those cars. But it's the little bits that never get out of the studio. Most people will never come across the story of why that car is like that, or what my intent or what I strive to do. And in about 10 minutes, they're kept pretty short. But what they do is they take you inside the design studio designer's mind as he's doing it. So it's pretty interesting. I think anybody who's not even, you don't have to be in design or car design specifically to enjoy them. Basically, they're just showing why I'm the crazy guy in the organization. Why they pay me to be crazy. You know. So
Oh,
it's
I love the fact you're doing all of this. And I mean, just briefly tell us about the electric aeroplane company, and also the. I'm going to put it up on the screen here. Tell us about the aeroplane company and this child seat as well,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's important before we have to go. So tell us about them as well.
Well, as soon as I got out, Mike, like I said, I wanted to do products that reached a mass market in a good way that would change the world. And if you think about it, the four values: bringing something to be the best in its segment, making it innovative and technology advancing, and obviously be sustainable and influenced by nature. What better than an airplane? Now, we all know airplanes, they're done as tubes in the air with wings attached to them, and they take you a long ways, and you get there fairly, I mean, as safe as you can get from A to B, the most safest way of travel. But what the world needs now is short distance and quick and not expensive and safe. And if you can imagine that you could basically go onto your phone with an app and tell this app or connect with this app and say, I need to get from London to Oxford, and I want to do lunch in Oxford with my client, and then I want to get back to the city center, and I've only got an hour. This type of aircraft, electrical vertical takeoff and landing, you'll go over to the closest place is maybe a hotel nearby that has a rooftop landing port, or a park very close to you. Very small, minimal space is needed. You get in it, it lifts up vertically, and it goes into a transition mode, and flies between 300 meters and 3,000 meters, flies in a straight line at about 180, 200 miles an hour, and lands. So basically your radius of your daily life is expanding incredibly, and it costs about half the price of an Uber taxi, say, if you want to compare the distances. And obviously there's no traffic jams. You're in total comfort and very little noise because it's electric. These are, to be certified, they have to be extremely safe. So there won't be a lot of them up in the air. They'll just be controlled by air traffic control and certified pilots. And basically, it's the new wave of mobility, the new age of transporting yourself from A to B.
Sold.
Yeah.
It's a
And they look awesome. They look awesome.
I see an MC12, a 458, a Mini, a Fiat 500, and a McLaren in the sky. And I'm like,